All of us that are involved in this tonight are volunteers. We care about our communities, whether it's the NAACP, Hispanic community, myself being a lifelong resident of the North Shore. I would like to recognize someone here tonight that stepped up in River Hills, a resident there, Bill Limerandi. He's the distinguished gentleman with the camera and the headset. He's a volunteer, and he's taping us tonight because he cares about this issue, he cares about our community, and I want to publicly thank him for that, as well as the others that have done this, including particularly the ICC and the Whitefish Bay Women's Club. The North Shore has always been intact. The first census that applied to redistricting was 1970. I was still on the board then. 1972 was the first election. The North Shore was basically intact then, except for a portion of Glendale. And as the years went by, Richard White served for 32 years. I served for 12. Bob Brunner here, who's now the village president of River Hills, followed me in office. He remembers his candidate forum here in Whitefish Bay. Tom Bailey followed that, and then we have the distinguished county board member that represents us today, Supervisor Joe Rice. Joe, could you stand up so people recognize you? The North Shore has taken tremendous pride in all these mayors and village presidents here tonight. You can see the interest they've taken, and communities like Greenfield, Franklin, Oak Creek have also taken an interest in collaboration, sharing of services, innovations to try and better serve the public. Obviously, I would be most familiar with the North Shore area, but just in a minute, shared services in the North Shore suburbs include the North Shore Fire Department, the North Shore Health Department, dispatching, library, water, emergency government, things like this. And this happened because these communities were intact all these years and continue to work together. And as you'll see in my hopefully brief remarks, this is in jeopardy now with what's been proposed by the county board itself. This is a map that shows the current and then the proposed districts, but probably from the standpoint of the North Shore, if you could turn to the next one, Steph. You see the North Shore district. To the left is the current district, and to the right is the proposed district. And for some unknown, mysterious reason, that red portion in southwest Whitefish Bay is now going to be reattached with a little finger connection, which is required under the law. It has to be contiguous to the city of Milwaukee. And this, from the standpoint of people in the North Shore, was just an extraordinary situation, and we wondered how something like that could happen. We also note on the map that Supervisor Rice, who lives in Whitefish Bay, I and my 5 brothers are all proud graduates of Whitefish Bay High School. He lives right in the middle of Whitefish Bay, and you see he's been very conveniently redistricted out of the North Shore. After all of his years of public service, he will now be connected with going all the way down the lakefront into the city of Milwaukee. Whitefish Bay has been a leader in the North Shore for all these years, working closely with Fox Point, Bayside, Glendale, River Hills, and to separate Whitefish Bay is something that was shocking to many of us. So the question becomes how and why did this happen? And I guess I just make some quick bullet points. The county board failed to comply with the legal requirement to properly interact with the ICC, and that's why the ICC became involved. We have to reopen this process, get the ICC involved. They represent the same people as the county board. They should have equal standing on redistricting with the county board, and we're committed to making sure that that type of thing happens. Second, I would think that there would be a good faith practice of involving all the members of the board in the redistricting process. There are 19 members today. 17 of them were consulted on redistricting. 2 were not, and one of those 2 was Supervisor Rice. And I'm not trying to stir up anything here. All I'm saying is we need to go back, reopen the process, and have all 19 members participate in the process. Third, the county board, when it adopted the redistricting proposed ordinance, the meeting was held and it wasn't noticed. And after the meeting started, a notice was posted. And I'm not going to comment on the end result in the courts, but a lawsuit has been filed against the county board last Friday, June 17th, alleging that the Wisconsin open meeting laws were violated as a part of the process of adopting this redistricting ordinance. Fourth, it would seem that, if we could go ahead, Stefan, this is the impact on Whitefish Bay, dividing the community into multiple districts for the first time ever, separating Whitefish Bay from the rest of the North Shore suburbs, as I mentioned, needlessly combining Whitefish Bay with other non-aligned districts. And then going on, looking at the end result, the County Board redistricting plan overall goes from 19 to 18. I mean, how many times in government do we see a tie vote on something? We want to encourage this type of inaction. It would seem an odd number would have been mandatory. It does fail to address with one reduction, calls for greater reduction of the size of the board, the cost of each board member with fringes, staff, and so on. Depending on how you compute all this with office space and everything, could be somewhere between $75,000 and $100,000 per year per person, and other related costs as well. It disrupts and dilutes traditional communities of interest, and the fact that the Hispanic community was excluded from this. The African American community could have and should have been more included, made a request to be included, and was not. And what we end up with is it consolidates power in the hands of nearly all the incumbents. That's the end result. I was giving me a message here to wrap up, so I guess I had a little bit more I wanted to share. But my suggestion is this. Supervisor Sanfilippo, we both serve on the county board. You've taken a leadership position in this area. Supervisor Pat Jurczyk has done that, Supervisor Paul Cesars, and several others. It would seem to me that if you would follow through on what you said earlier, and meet with Nate Holm, meet with this Hispanic community, and come up with a combined Hispanic, African American, county board, alternate plan that would better meet the objectives, this would be a very positive thing. I have some quotes I'd like to give, but can I use those on my answer to questions?
Yeah.
Okay.
Fit it into the panel discussion.
I would like to share, if you ask me a question, has there been any media coverage of this? I'd be happy to respond. Thank you.
If I were to ask questions without the microphone, could you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, I'd like to just be able to do it this way so we can all stay seated and have a nice give and take. If people are having trouble hearing, let me know and we'll march people back and forth to the mics. So first of all, thank you to each of our four panelists for your opening presentations. You put out a lot of very interesting, good information. Now let's engage in some constructive dialogue. I want to begin by talking about the size of the Milwaukee County Board. According to the Wisconsin Counties Association, the average size of county boards in Wisconsin is actually 23.3 members. Milwaukee County actually did reduce the size of its county board from 25 to 19, I believe 5 or 6 years ago. So my question for the panelists, to be a little bit of a devil's advocate, I think all of you have voiced some concern about the size of the county board. And so my question is, given that Milwaukee County is the largest county by far in the state of Wisconsin, that the size of our county board is smaller than the state average, to the extent that you feel that the size of the county board should be diminished, why do you feel that way?
Okay, I'm sorry. Thank you very much. And my kids will attest to the fact that I can yell, so you should all be able to hear me. The county board in Milwaukee is the Milwaukee County is the only county in the entire state that every municipality is incorporated. So while other counties have larger boards, they have bigger roles to play within their community. We have complete aldermen. All of our municipalities have aldermen, and they have or village trustees, so that you have an extra layer of government in Milwaukee County than what you don't have in other areas. It's also important to note that Milwaukee County is the only full-time board in the state of Wisconsin. So if you're going to look at numbers and size, then you have to try to look at that as well. If you're going to stay with a larger size board, then you would want to maybe go back down to a part-time. I just want to make things clear. I presented a 15-district plan. I actually am in favor of going down much smaller than that. I think the ideal number for full-time county supervisor position in Milwaukee County is actually 9. But realizing that that's a substantial drop from the current plan is why I proposed 15, because I was trying to come up with a plan that I felt the board could reach consensus on, and unfortunately we didn't do that.
Anyone else care to take a shot at that question?
I'll just take a little companion perspective on this. When Bob Brunner and I represented this area of the county board, we were county board members and we had no staff. We worked together. We bring in people to help us draft things. I happen to have a legal background, and I worked with the people on the board. And I'm proud to say that in those days, the majority members of the board and the African American members of the board worked very closely together, and some very close working relationships took place. And we didn't have staff. When I started, we had no offices. We were there. I didn't even know what the salary was. We were there because we wanted to serve and we wanted to make a difference. Now, we have private offices, individual staff for every member of the county board, 3 or 4 staff people, staffing committees, staffing other things. Someone could ask, perhaps someone with the numbers, they're a little more familiar to them, what the total staffing complement of the county board is. And you'll see it's turned into a gigantic enterprise with heavy overhead expenses and other costs that any business, if you looked at it, with the diminishing role of county government and the objectives people are talking about of spinning things out of county government and doing them in a different way. Somehow we've got to look at a more efficient and cost-effective way to function, whether this is a private or a public entity. So looking at this and examining it and recognizing if we're going to have this type of staff assistance and that much support, we certainly could do that with a smaller number of board members. Whereas if we want to have a larger board, then we should cut the compensation way down and have those people participate within those guidelines. But we can't have it both ways here, where we just keep growing and growing and growing government, and the expenses keep growing and growing and growing, and we take over more and more and more of the courthouse, and the public is greatly concerned about tax increases and costs and things of that type. This would seem to me, other than the board members that might lose some of their jobs, one of the people said, well, how are we going to protect our jobs? I mean, I don't think that's our concern as citizens. Our concern is for government to better serve the people. And if we can do that with smaller... And I want you to know at my age, I'm not running for anything. If we can get an efficient, smaller board with Hispanic, African American, and all the different constituencies at least considered and embodying this plan, this is a way to make this work better for the future. Many of us feel the current county board is not functioning the way it should be. Maybe some of you think it is. I don't. And it was a lot better many years ago. And we were very proud to see that happen. And we've got some very distinguished people here tonight. Mr. President Sanfilippo has taken a real courageous interest in this area. But more needs to be done. New faces probably would be helpful to better address these issues for the future. So that would be my response.
We'll out the issue of county board size in just a moment, but let me just ask one, maybe 2 follow-up questions. Let's say you had a choice. Let's say the choice was either reduce the size of the county board or keep the board at its current size and reduce the role, the salary level, the compensation level of supervisors to a level that would appropriately reflect a part-time status. Which, in your opinion, and I'm looking at Supervisor Sanfilippo and Mr. Mulcahy, who's argued this point, but if you had to make that choice, which would you prefer, or would it be both?
Well, I did a survey in my fall newsletter, and I asked my constituents that question, which would you prefer? And they overwhelmingly said reduce the size of the board,